Hi, and welcome to Just Drew, a space where I speak on renewal, reinvention, and reviving your life, especially as we grow older. And basically, here we're remembering who we are. Today, I'm going to talk about wealth in life. And no, it will not be focused on financial wealth. When you go onto all these platforms, all we see is people talking about financial wealth. But there has to be more in life than financial wealth. So what other aspects of life, of wealth are there in life? Join me as I talk about it, and let's see where the list I came up with and I researched on brings us. One of the aspects I read about is emotional wealth. Emotional wealth has to do with your emotional intelligence, how you relate to others, how you empathize with others, and how you think about their well-being. Now, you'd think that this is something that everybody has, but you'd be surprised to find out that not many people have it, and not many people are trying to cultivate it either. Emotional wealth is very important because empathizing with others is how we grow as human beings, how we learn to relate better with people, learn how to function and how to think about others, walking in their shoes and trying to think about what they're going through. That is emotional well-being, and one aspect of wealth that many people really need to consider. I think especially now it's lacking a lot. And of course we have mental health. Mental health is priceless and can be considered a form of emotional wealth. Mental health, without it you can't work, you can't relate to your family properly. Without good mental health you can't relate to just people in general. The people suffering from depression and all these diseases that we're now much more aware of, thank goodness, and we're able to get much more aid for it. But without emotional wealth, one can really struggle in life, and that is also a different aspect that people should consider when they're thinking about their all-rounded wealth. Next, we have social wealth. Social wealth is the connections you have with people who could be your family, extended family, your friends, and all these aspects build around what one would consider to be social wealth. This is something people take very lightly, especially as we grow older. I'm in my 40s now, and I can say it's something I value very much, because as we grow older, we part ways, not necessarily in a bad way, but we are living in different parts of the world. We are consumed with our own personal lives, and at times your social wealth, it can deteriorate, which you don't want it to, because as you grow older and you grow more apart from people, you want to bring these ties closer, so that when you're in your 70s, 80s, you may have gotten new friends, but you can also still maintain the ties that you had, because those are memories that you want to keep. So social wealth is extremely important in one's life, and many people don't have it. Living in Scandinavia at the moment, I live in Copenhagen in Denmark, I can see the individualism that's in this society. That's not a good or a bad thing, it's just a thing. And sometimes I see the elderly people walking around alone. I'm not saying they didn't develop their social ties, because I'm seeing them alone. I'm seeing them every day of their life. But I can understand now that I see an older person alone, how extremely lonely it could be for them if they didn't develop their social wealth when they were younger. So that before we get to that age, it's important for us to realize these are ties we have to cultivate for both ourselves and our friends and our family in future, if you want to live a wealthy life. Another aspect of wealth that I would think needs to be focused on, though many people focus on it right now, is your physical wealth and health. Because without physical health, again, it ties to living a long life, longevity in life. Without good physical health, when you get older, you will not have the easiest or most how could I say it? Calm and non-problematic life, because having having physical ailments as one grows older, that could maybe be avoided if you consumed better food and exercised more. That is something that could be worked on when one is younger. And there are many people who do ignore this. And, living in the West now and seeing how sugar is advertised and sold and sugary products, I struggle with it myself because I'm a sweet tooth, no doubt. But I also am starting to get cognizant of the fact of I can't continue living as I used to when I was 20, because it will have repercussions. So your physical health is important in terms of your consumption, your movement. Right now, luckily because of my work, I walk a lot. I hit 10,000 steps at a minimum daily, and I'm grateful for that. And that's one of the reasons I changed my career. But I would also want to do more regarding my physical health. And I think that's something that people take for granted when they're younger. But as you get older, it's something that needs to be worked on actively, and in order to maintain a wealthy health life, physical life. One other aspect of wealth is, of course, intellectual wealth, and this is regarding to who you are as a person. And I want to say that for me, I don't consider it necessarily to be education, because I've met many educated people, and I really try not to judge, but yeah. So intellectual wealth, what does that have to do with? I feel it has to do with curiosity about people, about new things, about developing interest and learning, not necessarily in academic institutions, because not everybody has access to that, but reading and expanding one's knowledge, that for me is intellectual wealth. I like listening to people from all walks of life, because I always feel I can learn something new, and it helps me expand how I think and how I look at life, because they may have a different way to look at life, and how they express themselves intellectually or with a new aspect to me. That's growth in my view. So intellectual wealth is very important, and where you get it from is also very important. It's important to stay curious. It's important to read. It's important to be curious about people, places, cultures. And that's just for your own personal growth. And you can, as you meet new people and expand in life, not only having a narrow view towards life, you'll see how the world becomes a much more interesting place. So intellectual wealth is something that's highly important in life. And of course, another aspect of intellectual wealth is how one thinks creatively and the creativity one has in life. I have a daughter, and the way she expresses herself creatively is so amazing to me, and I wish I was able to keep that from my youth, from my younger days. But it's something that I look at her and I admire. And right now, I'm also trying to develop and grow, and which is also part of being on YouTube. This is something, if you told me this last year, that I would be on YouTube, I would not have believed you, and yet here I am. If you told me I'd be on social media sharing my thoughts with people I do not know, I would have said no, that's not possible, because of who I am as a person, who I've developed to be as a person, very private, very introverted. But I decided to challenge myself, and in challenging myself, I am looking at another aspect of creativity that I do not know where it will grow into, but I'm enjoying it so far. So developing intellectual wealth is highly, highly favorable for all, I think. Another aspect of wealth that people need to consider, aside from their financial wealth, is your spiritual wealth. Now, when it comes to spiritual wealth, when people speak of, I'm not speaking of religion, I'm speaking of your walk with your inner self that only you know. It may be religious, it may not be. It may be that you're focused on solely mindfulness and peace and developing who you were internally, developing your values as a human being. And this requires a lot of introspection. It requires a lot of alone time. There are many people who struggle being alone, but there's a very important aspect of life that is developed when one is alone. You have to be comfortable with yourself, comfortable with being alone, because if you can't be alone with yourself and your thoughts, then what do you have to offer others? Yes, you can be in noisy situations, but being alone and learning who you are spiritually, your values, being mindful is also greatly important. And in a world that I feel regards spirituality even less, unless you're in those circles, I can only think it's tragic, because being spiritual for me has helped me in extremely many situations, and it has helped others. If you look into it on the internet, and you can find the spiritual circle that suits you best, because there are many people who have had religions who have treated them horribly and have had extremely difficult relationships with religion. But there are other aspects of being spiritual that exist. They don't have to be religious, and those aspects can also be used to develop a spiritual life, of course, which helps develop one's values, helps develop one's inner self, that can help you as you grow older in life. And it is highly vital that you do so. As I grow older, that's how I feel. Another aspect of wealth that, of course, is not focused on the financial is wealth in regards to time. Living in Scandinavia, every minute counts. Just be late for the train and you'll see, or the metro. If you can be late 1 minute for the metro, and that's it. And you learn how to, time yourself. But what I mean in regards to time wealth is having time to do what you love, to be with who you love, and spend, just time enjoying life, appreciating life. For some, it can be very challenging. I could say also, I would put myself in this box because my current career requires that I be up at 5 a.m. and be out of the house and at work very early. And that means I'm missing a lot of aspects of my child's life as she's growing. And if I come back extremely tired, I'm also missing that time when she's back home. And if you ask me, I'm not time wealthy. That's something I'd like to change. But it's also something people should consider in their lives, whether they are time wealthy, whether they have spending enough time with loved ones, and because using this time is how you cultivate your relationships for the future, for the social wealth that I spoke of earlier. So time wealth is something that we must consider, and also another thing that is actually tied with financial freedom. Many of the people who talk about financial freedom, they also talk about time wealth. That topic seems to go hand in hand. So at least that's something that they consider, that they're looking to gain back their time, which is, important too. And next we have environmental wealth. This is a no-brainer when we consider the state of our planet right now. The state of consumption in the world, unnecessary, if you ask me. Unnecessary consumption, consumerism is just killing the planet, according to what I see. And environmental wealth is very important, because it's not only for us. Just because you're living in the planet right now and you're fine, 8 years from now you may not be here. And what are you leaving for your children, grandchildren, if you have none? What are you leaving for your society? Environmental wealth is something that we should always think about. When you think about all the consumption that people tend to do you think about where all that consumption lands when you put it in the in the whatever bin is collecting clothes, because I come from Kenya and I've seen all the unnecessary consumption landing in Kenya, because that's where it's shipped away. So when you're in the West, it's out of sight, out of mind. When you're in places like Kenya and you visit some of the dump sites, you're like, okay, this stuff is still here in our planet, causing havoc. All these low grade, low quality items that are sent to Africa, and everybody is just happy thinking that they are saving the world. But really, are you? Environmental wealth is something that has to be thought about conclusively, and it is in how you shop, the decisions you make on a daily basis. They have a huge impact on the future of everybody on this planet. And I think it's extremely important that we be mindful of that, knowing that it's only one earth that we're inheriting. There's no other. Maybe people are going to Mars in future, but for me, I would say let's bet on our earth and take care of it. It's all we have right now. Another aspect of wealth that I thought was very interesting when I came across it and made perfect sense once I read it was cultural wealth. We are all part of mankind, but we all have our own cultures which we value, and without them, you are kind of lost. There's a Swahili saying that says mkosa mila ni mtumwa, which basically translates to something along the lines of, if you do not know your culture and your heritage, you're basically lost. You're like a slave wandering through life. And cultural heritage is something that can be beautiful. Of course, there are aspects of culture that as we grow intellectually, we know that this does not benefit certain people and they need to be done away with. But there are other aspects of culture that are beautiful, and they're beautiful to learn and see when you see people posting the different cultures on Instagram and all these other, and you see people posting cultures on all these platforms. It's amazing to see who we are as human beings. And it's, I think, very important to know one's culture. And I think also appreciate your culture and understand it, knowing where you came from and knowing you're going, and the culture is always developing. And this, whatever you are, whoever you are, is also developing. I think that's something that's really fantastic for mankind. So cultural wealth is something we need to appreciate so much. I love it. I love reading about culture. I love reading about everybody's culture. I'm nosy or curious like that, and it helps me also understand people more. When I moved to Scandinavia, and I was thinking, wow, these people can be very quiet. They can be. I'm also quiet, so I didn't find that to be much of a big deal. But that the whole society is like that, that's kind of amazing. And then you read about how they developed as a people and how they had long, cold winters and darkness, and they're struggling. It's a no-brainer that they're quiet and introspective. I like that. It's pretty cool. So I learned that about other cultures. Maybe they can learn something about mine. Maybe they can learn about any other cultures in the world. And learning about different cultures, it just makes the earth such an exciting and beautiful place. And yes, the cultural wealth that comes with that is priceless, because we're talking about years and years of things developing. And shout out to the people who document the culture, and let us have the opportunity to see it, experience it, learn it, and understand it. It's just an absolutely amazing, I would almost say, selfless thing to me, and I think it's great. Another aspect of wealth, which is which not many people have right now, is personal freedom. Personal freedom, when you living in Scandinavia, freedom is here in huge amounts. You can be who you want to be, do what you want to do. Of course, there are some exceptions that are not spoken about when you dig deeper into it. But personal freedom generally is respected here. And now that I live here, and I can say that when I think back to my country in Kenya, personal freedom is something that is not really, it's not as big as it is here. And of course, different areas are different in the world. That's just how it is. But I really value the personal freedom I've gotten to experience here, because it has helped me also grow and develop who I am without having interferences from others. It's fantastic, and I wish it for everybody. Really, there's nothing really much I can say about personal freedom. It's great. We also have recreational wealth. Wealth just to have fun. Of course, it ties with financial freedom, but not necessarily, because you can just have free time. For example, if you have time wealth and you have good health and you have good social ties, you don't even really need any finance to enjoy yourself if you're with friends or with family, isn't it? And it can be fantastic to have recreational wealth, to have the opportunity to spend good times with loved ones, to develop memories of who you are as a person and who you've been. Recreational wealth can be very important for you. So it's fascinating to see all the wealth that there is, and yet people only focus on financial wealth. It's crazy. But basically, all these aspects of wealth that I've spoken about, they contribute to a full life, an all-rounded life. A life where you're happy alone and with others. A life whether you're building society with others and you're doing it also alone. A life where you're building for the future, for future generations, and not only for yourself now. And looking at life that way makes you realize that there's so much you can look towards in life aside from financial wealth. So much that you can grow as. And yeah, it's a fun thing to realize, actually, because you just open your mind to how many more fun things you can do and how much you can expand as a human being. If you have any other angles in which you look at wealth, please share them in the comment section. I'd love to hear about them. And as we learn and grow together, let's read and do that. Read our comments, share our comments, and have a good time. Thank you, and bye-bye.